Hello, this is the front desk.
Good morning and welcome to episode 79 of the Crackin podcast with your hosts Dr. Terry Wyman and Dr. Spencer Barron. How you doing this morning, gentlemen?
Ready to go, buddy.
Hey, Lance. Doing well.
That's great to hear. So today we are joined by Dr. Sandra Kaufmann. Dr. Kaufmann began her academic career in the field of cellular biology, earning a master's degree from the University of Connecticut in tropical ecology and plant physiology. Turning to medicine, she received her medical degree at the University of Maryland and completed a residency and fellowship at Johns Hopkins in the field of pediatric anesthesiology. For the last 7 years, she has been the chief of pediatric anesthesia at the Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital, a nationally recognized center of excellence. How are you doing this morning, Dr. Kaufmann?
I am doing well. Thank you for having me.
You know, the fact
No
that you live in the same neighborhood or in the same area as Spencer, I'm going to start off because otherwise I'm not going to get a word in edgewise.
That is right. He knows me well.
I do. And I'm just going to be able to sit back and watch the fireworks go because this is going to be fantastic. But I do have to start off because I know you're an anesthesiologist, but you got a lot of fame with your anti-aging and longevity, which is a term we can talk about down the road. But when I grew up, age was considered to be respected, and I always grew up with the knowledge from my parents that you respect your elders, and and when you go to Asia, they bow at your elders, and yet in our culture, people want to find that fountain of youth. They want to look younger. They don't want to have that look of age and all that. Why do you think that is, and what got you into the world of anti-aging from being an anesthesiologist?
So that's an excellent question. And I think that the whole bowing business is just because traditionally there was nothing you could do about it. Just accept it, swallow it, deal with it, and pretend that it was a good thing. In today's world, right, there are clearly ways that you can defeat aging. And to be honest, longevity has very little to do with anesthesia. What it has to do with is the fact that I'm a rock climber. And I was dangling off a cliff in my mid-40s. And I'm like, unless I defeat this aging thing, my days of adventuring are over. I climb big mountains. I climb big rocks. I'm a huge swimmer. And
Wait.
I don't want to get old.
I got to interrupt you. You live in Florida and use the word mountains.
Yeah, they're not local exactly.
Okay.
The world a lot.
I'm a rock climber and I got mountains all around me. So the fact you said I'm a rock climber in Florida, I didn't mean to interrupt you and be rude, but I just went rock climbing in the mountains. I'm just
yeah, I know. Totally fine. We fly to Vegas a lot. I fly all over the globe.
Okay.
But the key is that Florida is a fantastic place to live. It's sunny. I can swim and bike every day. And then you fly around and I climb mountains. The key to which, however, is that if you are in your mid-40s, which is what I was, I didn't want to age. And I thought, this is absurd. And I know people have been chasing this holy grail for, as long as the dawn of humanity. I figure, what the hell, let's be audacious and see if I could figure it out, right? Which is rather obnoxious on my part. But I did. I have a brain, and I sat there and I read through every possible scientific journal I could find. And I came to the conclusion that cells aged for very specific reasons. And if you could decelerate each of those reasons, you could theoretically decelerate all of aging. And it turns out that that's pretty true.
So, here's
and then I guess just to follow up on that. Now you're going to be like, what does that have to do with anesthesia? And the cool thing about anesthesia, especially pediatric anesthesia, is that it's the study of what substances do to your body and what your body does to substances. So, for example, if you're trying to figure out that you're going to take agent X, well, how much do you need? How frequently do you have to take it? How does it get to your tissues? How do you metabolize it? That's what I do for a living. So when I go to figure out, like, okay, I'm going to take agent X for longevity, I get to figure out the whole soup to nuts strategy of how I'm going to work that in with all of my other agents and how best to optimize what it does for me. So that's the anesthesia part of it.
Love that. So let's go back in your history a little bit and understand that I think this is a good foundation to build on, is that you have this master's degree in ecology and evolutionary biology. Now that has obviously been a springboard for you, but before that, how did you get into even that? Because I would rather watch paint dry, but go ahead.
Okay, so it all depends on where you are and what you're doing. So I'm from Maryland, but I went to college down at University of Maryland, Miami, sorry. And the tropics were just like this amazing, new, exciting world. I had never seen a palm tree growing up, right? The hell's a palm tree? It's really cool. So I'm in the biology department, and they're like, well, if you want, you can go on adventures in the jungles on spring break. I'm like, well, that sounds super cool. So I have been lost in many jungles, and it leads you to ask all of these evolutionary jungle-like questions, which led me to, oh, I'm going to study this. So I did. I went to University of Connecticut. Again, it's how do plants change to different changing environments? So I spent a ton of time looking at cells under microscopes and then going out into the field and sort of, looking at what they do, how they do. I've been attacked by monkeys. I've had a really cool life. But then at some point you go, oh shit, how am I going to pay the bills? Right. So my dad said, if you go to med school, I'll pay for it. And voila, I find myself in med school. But I have this background of adventure and research, and now I have medicine behind me. So it's kind of this neat sort of, confluence of experiences.
So what I also find extraordinarily fun and interesting, that I can't wait to really embark on the juice of this conversation, and that is that you make comment in your book about cellular plasticity, that people have no idea what that is and how that works. And I did a lot of work with concussion, and knowing that there's neurological, there's plasticity of the brain, and that was remarkable. Tell me, how did that start to evolve into what you are doing now?
So what's cool about cells is you can think about them as the stagnant little cells that you see in the 5th grade textbook, or you can think about them as these amazing little critters that constitute who you are, right? We are cells and cell products. That is what we are. And we know that we all change dynamically over the course of time, and it has to come from the basis of cells. So you're talking about brain trauma. If you're looking at a neuron, you can make it do all sorts of really cool things. The brain suffers from 2 big problems. Number one, it uses a ton of oxygen, so you have free radical damage. And 2, it uses a lot of glucose, which leads to glycation issues. So that's why your brain bites the dust. On the other hand, because we know that, we can feed all sorts of substances into the brain to, number one, block those 2 problems, and number 2, to promote plasticity. So, for example, if you can get magnesium into your neurons, it increases plasticity in the hippocampus, and you can make your memory better. There's all sorts of these little tricks to improve your being.
Love that. Absolutely love that. This is yeah, because I mean, come on, we're all starting to lose our mind.
I'm not getting a word in edgewise.
All right. So the concept of, well, okay. Again, your next step was that you just devoured the literature, and you created a perspective and a protocol, such as the Kaufmann protocol. But in order to get to that point, you go through a lot of research, and as chiropractors, Dr. Terry and I, we realize how the research has evolved for even our profession, our natural healing art, and has really the research is plentiful. But when it comes to supplements or adjuvants, you could read research today, and then tomorrow there could be something very contradictory. So how does that work into your system of determining what was a great supplement or adjuvant?
So the first question, right, is why do cells age? Not what to take. The first question is, why do cells age? And I have to tell you that my office at work looked like a Post-it factory had exploded, right? I would just download. I'm old, right? I suck at reading on the computer. So I downloaded like a zillion articles, and I cheated because I work for the hospital, so I can have access to everything, right? And I have experience reading these stupid articles because that's what I did in grad school. And you start reading, it seems like Hebrew or Chinese or something, but after a while, you get the gist. And I realized that there were 30,000 different ideas as to why you age. Some of them were absolute fucking crap. Oh, pardon my language. And other ones are absolutely legit, right? And you start shuffling them into piles. Well, this is similar to that, and this is similar to that. I ended up over the course of a year and a half with 7 piles, right? So I decided that there were 7 tenets of aging, and obviously there's subcategories. So just thinking about tenet number 1, which I call DNA alterations, right? You've got telomere loss, you've got epigenetic modification, you've got protection of your DNA, right? All of those things fit into your DNA category, right? So that became tenet 1. And then tenet 2 is like mitochondria and so on and so forth. But there's 7 tenets. But then as you're reading these articles, right? Let's say you're talking about sirtuins, because that's easy. Sirtuin-1, they would say resveratrol, comma, gold standard sirtuin-1 activator, comma, and it would keep going. You go, well, hell, that seems like a good idea. So then you would take, resveratrol and look up everything known to mankind about that, right? So then you end up with literally thousands of articles on that. You read through it. Some of it's garbage, some of it's real. And if an article says something once, you think, well, maybe, maybe not. When it says it 100 times from different researchers around the globe, you go, well, that must have some kudos to it, right? That must be reasonably accurate. Right. So what I ended up doing is there was a big grid on my desk, like agent and then the 7 tenets, and I would get check marks like, oh, this seems to help in this category, check. Not this one, X. And then, oh, this one's really good, check, check. Which then became a numerical rating system, right? Oh, it has 1 check, that's a 1. Which then turned into a very sort of, algorithmic process, right? If you know it helps, how well does it help? So you look at, does it help in theory? Does it help in a test tube? Does it help in a small animal model? Does it help in people? And, so it became 0, 1, 2, 3. So now every agent that I look at gets rated in each of the 7 categories. And it takes me a ton of time to do this. It's extensive. But each agent comes with a 7-digit rating number so that you know exactly what categories it works in and how efficacious it is. Which then leads to the idea of building a protocol that's a mathematical algorithm and like not just like what your grandma told you to take. Like it's all very organized.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Right? I mean, that makes sense. It's just this
very
process
much so.
Of like, I didn't set out to do this. It just did. It just happens.
Love how you factored in all the things that made it a quality approach versus something that was maybe a fly-by-night perspective. When I listen to you, I get thrown back in time to a book I'm sure you remember called Life Extensions by Dirk Pearson and Sandy Shaw. You guys remember that? I mean, there was information.
Yes.
Yeah, there was information there that changed the way we looked at youth and aging. So I love that you have all this in a book that really describes it in detail. But off the cuff here, how many supplements do you take? I mean, with all the things
a day,
I was looking. Yeah.
Me, I take 72 a day.
Oh my God.
But there's a reason for each. I mean, it's not. Well, it sounds crazy, but it's not, right? But so when you think of,
it's not.
I know.
Wait. You had a podcast. You said 52. You've actually upped the ante by 20.
I did. Well, and I'll tell you why. So, like,
yes, please tell us why.
Right. So my last 2 binges, I spent 3 months obsessed with glycation, right? And I decided, because I'm very organizing, I guess. I'm sure there's a better word for that. Obsessed with like making things make sense. I decided that there were 7 ways that you could block glycation in your body, right? But you don't want to block each one 100% because then you're really screwing your metabolism. But if you decrease each one like 20%, by the time you get to the end, you're pretty much down to 0 glycation, right? Which then, of course, added 7 more agents, right? So that was problem number 1. And then I embarked upon the sirtuin adventure. And I realized I'm really good about activating sirtuin-1, but I'd kind of ignored all of the rest of them. And there's 7 of them. So I decided that really the only ones you really need to activate are 1, 3, and 6. And I wasn't doing 3 and 6. I'm like, well, I got to do that now, right? So that added a few more. And then, it just begets itself. Like you keep it. And then you go back and I reread my own book and I'm like, wow, that one's pretty damn amazing. I have to keep that. So like it's hard to get rid of them once they become like your beloved company. You try out some new ones, you try it on for size. And I can't recommend something to someone if I haven't done it myself, right? I mean, that makes sense.
So just to be clear to the listening audience, a supplement versus an adjuvant, you want to go ahead and give the definition so they understand?
Yeah. Right. So, so I make a big classification difference out of this. Most people don't. In my world, a supplement is something that you already have in your body that you are adding to. You are supplementing to your own endogenous quantities. An adjuvant is something your body has never seen. And the important thing here is that supplements have feedback loops and adjuvants do not. So as an example, carnosine, which I love, it's a great transglycosylating agent. You have your own carnosine in your body. As a consequence of that, you have an enzyme called carnosinase. So if you take too much carnosine, your body destroys it. So taking more is useless. Feedback loops, right? On the other hand, astaxanthin, your body's never seen before. I mean, other than the fact that it's in a lot of fish. But you don't have any feedback loops for astaxanthin, so you can take as much as you want with no alterations of how it gets metabolized, other than the fact that your liver is going to get a little upregulated. But like it doesn't destroy itself. So that's why I put them in two different categories.
Speaking of astaxanthin, I hope I'm pronouncing it as correctly as you are. Astaxanthin. That is, I know that is your. I know that's her favorite supplement.
Yes.
Why is it?
72 agents later, it's still my favorite one.
Why?
Because number one, it's completely entirely created by nature, right? If you take a regular green slimy cell from a bird bath, right? And you stress out that cell, right? You can yell at it, however you elect to stress it out. It makes this wonderful pigment, right? And the pigment protects that cell from its stressors. I mean, I kid around about emotional stress, right? But like salinity, temperature, free radicals, whatever that cell is undergoing, over the course of however many millions of years, that cell has evolved to create this lovely pigment. And it protects that cell from all harm. And we get to borrow that and protect our own cells, right? So that's really cool. Number two, there are no side effects. None. Zippo zero. And it's become prevalent through the entire marine system. So anytime you see anything pinkish or orangish, that's astaxanthin. It's in salmon. It's in roseate spoonbills. It's the pink in the shrimp that you eat, right? So the entire food chain has decided that this thing is the way to go to protect itself from, stress. So when we take it in, we digest it, goes through your body, it puts itself in the mitochondrial wall. It sucks up all of the free radicals, not all, but a lot, right? And then you excrete it. No harm, no foul. There are no side effects. So number one, it's a very potent free radical scavenger unto itself. And the other thing it does is it upregulates your own endogenous free radical scavengers to make your body work better. So like there is no downside to this. In addition, it's also an anti-inflammatory. So that's kind of cool. And it's just truly amazing. So there's no risk. It's all benefits. And how could you possibly beat that?
Well, I know they tend to use it as a coloring agent for maybe fish or something to make it more orange or appealing, maybe in salmon. I'm not sure, but I vaguely remember hearing that. But so now that there's this, you find out about this supplement, and now the makers of all the nutritional supplements out there decide to jump on the bandwagon. How does Dr. Sandra know what's quality and what's not?
Oh gosh, that is the most excellent question ever. Astaxanthin is a particularly easy one. The rest of them are a little bit more challenging, and you guys are going to love this. So my daughter she's a ginger. She is very pale with red hair, and she's a tennis player. And so she's very pale, and she's outside in the Miami sun all the time. And if I buy a cheap brand of astaxanthin, her skin burns. And she's my testing model. It's amazing. If I give her, no, I'm not kidding. If I give her 2 or 3 brands that are high quality, she's fine. She doesn't burn. She goes out there with her friends of every ethnicity. She doesn't wear sunscreen. She doesn't burn. They do. That's how I know astaxanthin works. And I tried scaling back, but I've come to the conclusion that there are a few companies. Hawaii makes it very good. Japan and Iceland makes a very high quality one, but other ones are kind of garbage. But it just
So
every
where
supplement
do you
is kind of
find it?
hard. Where do you find it? You Google it? Like, what do you mean? Where do you find it?
Okay. No, you said Iceland and Japan. It makes
No.
it shut up.
That's who produces it. You look on the label, man. You got to see where it's produced.
What? All right. What company are you getting it from?
So I usually use a
For
product
the
called
average person.
Bioastin. It's a huge company, and actually I sent a friend of mine that lives in Hawaii to go and see the company. And it's beautiful. It's an incredibly fantastic facility. Their astaxanthin is fantastic. It's Bioastin. It's probably a bit pricier than the other stuff, but I know where it's made, and it does incredibly well.
What's the name
Another
of the
friend
company?
of mine that
What was the name of the company?
Bioastin is the
Okay.
Bioastin, Bioastin. I know the one in Japan is good as well. I don't remember the name of it offhand, but a good friend of mine who owns the Oxford Healthspan company that makes spermidine have connections in Japan, and she's been over there, and she vouches for that. But so it's hard to sometimes tell. Some agents, it doesn't really matter. I usually use my standard examples. Dipeptides, carnosine, it doesn't matter where you get it. They're two amino acids stuck together. Anyone can make two amino acids stuck together. You got a test tube, I could make it in my kitchen. So that's not a big deal. The more complex ones are the ones that you need to kind of worry about.
Yeah.
Don't be laughing. I make a lot of things in my kitchen. So
But let me ask you though, you use yourself and others and as test subjects, as well as reading the literature, as well as you do. Everybody's so oriented around the traditional lab work. Some of the labs that we gauge our health by, a comprehensive metabolic panel and lipid panel and differential. What do you do lab work on yourself to determine if something's working or not?
So I used to, but it was pointless, to be perfectly honest, because the things that are important to longevity, we really don't measure. We measure things that are associated with known diseases. We measure our cholesterols because we know it's associated with, cardiac disease, etc. We don't measure sirtuin levels. We don't measure NAD levels. We don't measure like mitochondrial function. So the things that we really should be measuring, you can't. So it's kind of pointless to go chasing this stuff. For example, a great measurement would be DNA damage markers. That would be fantastic, and you can do it in lab studies, and you can do it. When you send people into experimental conditions, you can do it, but you can't go to Quest Diagnostics and have your DNA damage measured. It's just they're just going to throw you out the door, right? So you can't really do that. So at some point we will, but at the moment, no. So it's good to rule out regular standard diseases with regular standard labs, but beyond that, you kind of have to take it for what it's worth. So, for example, we know that by the time you're 35, your sirtuin 3 levels are dropping. We know that by the time you're 40, your NAD levels are dropping. We just know these things. So if you're not activating your sirtuins, you're going to have problems. And I always ask people the standard aging questions. Do you have presbyopia? Is your blood pressure going up a bit? Do you have the standard back pain? Are you sleeping at night? All of these things are directly correlated to the 7 tenets of aging. And so I can reverse a lot of that just by asking standard questions.
Well, that's good. That I like that, because I like doing lab work every 6 months, and that's the only gauge other than how I feel. But sometimes that's a little subjective. But I like what you're saying about not having to rely on lab work as much, but it is somewhat of a guide.
No, I mean, there's pros and cons for everything, but there's just a lot of things that we need to know that we just don't have the capacity to test. And I think we will, but at the moment we don't. And that's just the problem.
Yeah, I'm going to change directions a little bit because so I can actually say something.
Fair enough. Be my guest.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Otherwise, yeah, I'll never get a word edgewise with my guy over there. So and this is a subject that he knows nothing about because he's been in Florida forever. So we're going to talk rock climbing because I know you're a rock climber.
Okay.
As soon as you open your mouth as a rock climber, don't think that you know anything about rock climbing. You're a flatlander. So, being a rock climber, I was reading up of that, and I know you're a real rock climber because you like junk food. And
Oh, yes, I do.
every rock climber loves junk food,
What?
and we
What
like
is
that
that?
quick sugar. Oh yeah, we like that quick sugar high. We like to get up there. The higher you go, metabolism, dealing with less air quality when you're up. I've done a lot of high altitude mountains. The highest I've gone is 24,000 feet. And so you don't process food the same way when you're high up. So you gotta go the junk food route and you get kind of hooked on it. So, but you're an anti-aging people. You're an anti-aging doctor and you like junk food, which some people would say that's contradictory a little bit. So and you use what's called a decoy system. So can you explain a little bit about your decoy system and elaborate on the concept of the junk food and why you like it so much?
Okay. So why do I eat junk food? You're right. I'm an outdoor junkaholic, right? And when you're at a Craig, like you're not going to take your salad bowl, right? You're going to eat
No.
you're going to eat the Snickers that's in your pocket, right? That's what
Yes,
you
you
do.
are.
And so
Wow.
as a comparison, I've only ever made it to like 22.7. And my stats were in the 50s, so I bailed at that point. That being
Okay.
said, next time you climb, just as an aside, I can teach you how to change the cytochrome makeup of cytochrome C, which changes the metabolism so you can get higher with less issues. You can sort of turn into a Sherpa metabolism, which is really kind of fun.
Oh, that's
Totally
awesome.
cheats the system. So what I like to do is I play havoc with my metabolism because it's fun. And someday this may kill me, but I just find it horribly entertaining. So in terms of glucose, everyone knows I eat clean. Well, what does that mean, right? So if you talk about glucose, what exactly is it that glucose does that's so horrible? That's the question, right? So
Okay.
number one, glucose causes AGEs. This is what it does, right? It complexes non-enzymatically to proteins, lipids, and DNAs, takes out the protein, becomes incredibly inflammatory, and such and such, such and such, right? So you can eat the glucose if you prepare for it. And this was my latest obsession about the 7 steps for processing glucose, which means now I can eat anything I want for the most part, right? So number one, you can block how much glucose gets from your gut into your vasculature, right? There's 2 enzymes. There's alpha amylase and alpha glucosidase. And if you partially block them, you're going to block the ability to absorb the carbohydrates into your blood system. So that's step 1, right? You can increase it going into your muscles, right? Which helps you when you exercise. You can increase your GLUT4 receptor. You can decrease how much gluconeogenesis goes on, right? So that if you already have it in your body, you can shut off your liver gluconeogenesis, lowering that amount of glucose. You can change. The other thing that happens is when glucose goes into cells, it turns into fructose, which is 7 times more glycosylating than glucose, and then it turns into sorbitol. There's a great drug that blocks that conversion. So that's easy, right? You can take a drug that when glucose goes through your system, it gets filtered out by your kidney, and then it gets reabsorbed at the distal end of your kidney. You can block the reabsorption, therefore you can dump as much glucose as you want, right? There are all of these ways to get rid of glucose, but my favorite one, you're absolutely right, is what I call the decoy system. And glucose sticks to proteins because of 3 very specific amino acids, right? And because these amino acids are in tissues that are permanent in your body, that's one of the reasons like your skin falls apart and your bone falls apart over time because it gets glycosylated. So my decoy system is built around the idea that if you take these 3 amino acids, the glucose will preferentially stick to those versus the ones in your that are sort of in your permanent tissues. Therefore, you get that little complex and you excrete it. So the glucose just has something better to stick to, right? That's the amino acid decoy system. The other thing that works is there are 7 ways of blocking the conversion of glucose to an AGE. And then even if you get AGEs, lactoferrin sops them up. It's like it's an AGE sponge. So you can actually, that's another sort of decoy system. You can just absorb your AGEs and you excrete those. So there are many. You asked me why I'm on so many drugs. This is it, right? Each piece of this you can sort of block individually, and this is what I do. So my labs are fantastic, despite the fact that I'm a junk food junkie, because I like to think that I've outsmarted the system.
And I just like animal crackers and animal cookies and Snicker bars. I'm gonna have to bring you on my next climb so I can go here. Take this. I'm like but the higher I go, because I do all my climbs without oxygen. That's my challenge, and so I've never bottled up ever. But I just thought I liked animal crackers and I love Snicker bars, by the way. And so, but now I'm gonna have to have a separate pack for all the stuff to decoy me.
Well, so when you're climbing, don't decoy it, right? When you're climbing, don't
just go with it,
because you need your glucose. You're eating through it,
right?
But down here, I don't know if you do what I do. Like the habits continue. So I eat a donut a day. I'm really bad, but
I love donuts.
I love donuts. But right,
the gluten would kill me though.
You know what? You need to take your decoy system.
See? But you can outsmart all of this. I'll probably die tomorrow and then be like, she's an idiot. But I think that you can just outsmart it. So yeah, I take 72 things a day, but it's timed appropriately to match my crap diet.
You just said something. You outsmart the system versus playing the rules. I want to hear more about that, because I'm a rebel too. I mean, Spencer would kind of tell you that I kind of go against the grain sometime, and I love the fact that you have this rebel attitude and you like to outsmart versus play by the rules. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Well, I think that these crazy rules are made up by people that kind of know what they're talking about, but not completely, right? Like, I love these phrases that I don't understand. People go, I eat clean. What does that mean, right? Like, I don't get it. I just don't understand, right? People go, I just don't. People are like, oh, I'm gonna cleanse my body and clean out my gut. Why the hell would you do that? It doesn't bring you any benefit whatsoever, right? It makes no sense.
Oh my God.
So I follow what makes absolute sense based on actual literature, not Joe Schmo Men's Health, clean out your gut once a month. That makes no fucking sense. What makes sense is what you can actually look at on a molecular basis and then do. So people are like, oh, I'm a rebel because I don't do all that other crap. I think it's ridiculous. That being said, I do a lot of things that other people would consider moderately ridiculous, right? So it's like, for example, oxygen chambers are big now. Everyone's like, oh, try to make your telomeres longer with oxygen chambers. I think it's the dumbest thing in the world, because stem cells hate oxygen. So you're killing your stem cells by sitting in an oxygen chamber. And everyone's like, oh, it's the best thing since sliced bread. No, it's not. You're killing yourself. So don't do it, right? People just don't understand that you have to look at the base literature and not just do it like Joe Schmo tells you to do.
Wow. All right.
I like it.
We got some thinking to do.
We got some work
to do. We do. So,
I'm just gonna stay. I'm gonna stay at high altitude, so I have to come back down and do all that. I'll just stay up there so I can just eat all what I want and not worry about it. I do have to ask you about your Dr. Kaufmann protocols, because it's got to be unique to each person, isn't it? Or is it a standard rule for everybody?
So in reality, it should be different for everyone, right? That's why it's a protocol. And so the way it sort of works is every disease process. Well, let me back up. If you are completely and utterly normal, every one of the 7 tenets should be causing you a reasonably comparable amount of aging, right? So therefore, if you're a standard person, I can probably come up with a standard protocol, which I've done. No one's absolutely perfect, right? So everyone has some disease process or family history of some disease process, and that etiology falls in one of the 7 categories, right? So as an easy example, if you are diabetic, family history of diabetes, or just a junk food junkie like myself, you want to focus on tenet 7, which is waste management, which is glycation issues, right? So if you fall into a category such as that, you take more agents that has more points in category 7, right? If you have autoimmune diseases or inflammatory issues, or if you have family history of cancer, you either have obviously bad genetics. Usually childhood cancer is different than adult cancer. Adult cancer is failure of DNA repair mechanisms usually, right? So you can boost your DNA repair mechanisms, which falls into category 4, right? Or you can increase your autophagy. So if you have to know the etiology of every disease process, and then you can adjust your protocol to fit you. So it's absolutely personalized. And this is what I do for people. Like, they give me their family history, whatever, and I go, aha, you need X, Y, and Z more than other things, because that's just trying to avoid your concomitant disease processes. Does that make sense?
Oh, love that.